Hey guys, what's going on? It's Colin here again, back with another fan video. This is a Vornado, as you can see. It's a Vornado window fan. Actually not sure what the size on this is. I'm going to guess it's 10 or 12 inches. Let's see. Hang on, it's hard to use tape measure one-handed here. We'll call that a 10-inch fan. The blades at least are probably 10 inches. So there you go, it's a 10-inch window fan. And I believe that this dates to the early 50s. 1951, I believe, was the date that the guys came up with on the forum. But it's a pretty neat piece. This actually came from the trash, believe it or not. And the damn thing even still works. The motor's a little bit stiff. It was really stiff when I got it, and then I powered it on, it freed up slightly. But I mean, otherwise, this freaking thing works. But it was in the garbage, and one of my troublemaker friends decided to rescue it for me. So, Jeff, if you're watching, thanks so much. I really do appreciate it. But in this video, I figured we could go ahead and give this thing the good cleaning service that it deserves. It's in really nice original shape, which is cool. It's just got a lot of stupid crap like old tape on it and dust and dirt, and the motor needs a good service and it needs to be rewired and whatnot. But figured we could go ahead and do that in this video because this is a pretty neat fan. This is my first Vornado. I'm going to see if I can't turn this around one-handed here. For those of you guys who are interested, here is the information. So there you go. And this whole fan pivots too, which is kind of neat. It's a little bit stiff. It's actually very stiff, but this whole thing will pivot and flip around, and that's how you get your forward and reverse. Down here is probably a speed coil. You got your big old motor there. Some very crusty and crumbling wires here, as you can see. The insulation on that is just completely deteriorating in my hands. So obviously it needs to be rewired. Big and clunky. But yeah, figured in this video I'd take you guys along for a ride to give this thing a good clean service and rewire, and I think we'll have a very nice fan on our hands. But before we get to any of that, figured I'd just do a quick power up. I did inspect all the wiring. It is not great, but it's safe enough for this. So here we go. Here's high. I will say that these Vornados are pretty freaking powerful. You saw how much pitch is on those blades. So, I mean, it's a little bit on the noisy side on high, but it's really throwing out some air. It's pretty freaking impressive. Give you guys an idea here. Flapping in the breeze. There's medium. It's got a really nice distinction between all the speeds too, which I really like. Because on low it's barely even audible. Got a slight motor hum and chatter, but otherwise, fan noise wise or air noise wise, it's really not that loud at all. But once again, it's throwing out a nice breeze. Do a quick spin down here. It's pretty short because this thing needs oil like you wouldn't believe. But it's actually getting better the more I run it, but I'm still going to pull it apart and service it. But yeah, anyways, super neat fan, so let's dive right into it. Alright, so I figured I'd do another like working through it type video because they seem to be popular and they're kind of fun to make, so why not? Go ahead and pop that grill off. It's super easy to do. It's got a little bit of rust on the back, so maybe we can shoot a little bit of paint on that. Help clean it up. It's just a like gray color, so that shouldn't be too bad. It's kind of a neat looking badge in the center too. I don't know whether that yellowed with time or if it was always that color, but pretty neat looking. Looks like I need an Allen key to get those blades off, so let me go grab one of them. Can't beat that. Look at the blade pitch on these things. Isn't that ridiculous? That is some crazy, crazy blade pitch there. And this has got some heft to it too. This centerpiece is all cast iron, I think. But that's a hell of a blade set there, that's for darn sure. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and start taking some of the wiring out of this. The cord that's on the outside of it here, you know, going to the plug, isn't bad at all, and it's nice and long, so I'm going to leave it. I don't think it's original because right here you can see where it's been spliced in. So, however, this cord here is actually not so bad. So it's really just the wire that's going to the motor is, well, toast. So, I think we'll go ahead and just replace that one. I can live with this, that's not so bad. Go ahead and crack this little switch box open here. I believe this is a speed coil fan. I always recommend taking pictures of this stuff before you take it completely apart. Helps you remember later on where things go. I'm gonna lower you guys here. So this is our, you know, line in, which is actually a good thing we pulled this out and gonna replace it because there's bare wire there, folks. So that's good that we thought to do that, or I thought to do that, because this wire actually isn't so good. This is the wire going to the motor, which is obviously shot. We've got our 3-speed switch here, which is a nice design. I like that switch. That works well. And our speed coil. It looks like this tape that was on here is coming apart, but I'm not too worried about that because I'm planning on revarnishing that anyways. So definitely leave this apart here. Put that off to the side for later. For now I can make a nice little parts tray. Here we are left with the just the motor. Yeah, that's some pretty crusty, crappy wiring there, folks. Good to see that out of there. Try and extend this all the way. Looks like this was on rubber isolators that are now falling apart, so I'll have to get some of those. I think I can get some of them at the hardware store. Of course, the nut on the other end of that is spinning. Go ahead and take this off of there. Huh, that's neat. Got 2 separate little wires coming out of the motor there. That makes things convenient. Alright, so I'm wondering whether we can get away with just taking these couple nuts off here and separating the motor sort of in place, or whether we'll have to take all these screws and bolts out. So I'm going to go ahead and try and get these off. These two just hold this little bracket on for the motor. These two seem to be the ones that actually hold the motor together. See if this motor will kind of come apart or not. Also going to uncrimp these. Actually, you know what, I'll just cut them. Forget it, it's not worth it. Go ahead and give this a light tap. See if this won't separate for us. Go ahead and do the same in the front here. Doesn't seem like it wants to cooperate. Figures. Alright, in that case I guess I'll have to undo these couple bolts here. So, do my best to hang on to the nuts. So here's our motor. It's an interesting design. It's actually got oil ports. They were just facing down for some reason. This whole motor I think was flipped at one point. Should have been sitting in there like this. But that's alright. I'm wondering if this thing was pressed together slash sealed, or whether we'll actually be able to pop this apart and service it. Go ahead and give this a few taps with the rubber mallet here. See if we can't see or feel any movement. It doesn't seem to want to separate. I have a feeling, you can see these things are stamped here, I have a feeling that this is assembled and then crimped in around the stator. In fact, you can see the stator here and here, so actually I think that might be what the thing is here. I think that's how this was put together. Well, in that case, what I'm going to go ahead and do, the thrust, the in and out play really isn't bad at all. So it's not like it needs thrust washers. In that case, I'm just going to go ahead and put some oil in these ports. And I'm going to contact a couple friends who are into these things. See if we can't pop this open somehow, because I'd like to revarnish it if possible. But worst case scenario, we'll just make sure we lubricate this thing well, and we'll take the air compressor and blow out as much dust as we possibly can. And that might be it for motor servicing on this. We'll have to see. But I guess in the meantime we could start working on something else. Alright, so I was actually able to sneak out one of these supports. I used a right angle screwdriver here. Luckily this flathead screw wasn't too tight. Something I find interesting is that this one is a flathead, yet the other three are Phillips. But they've all got the same exact paint on them. So either somebody repainted this at one point, or the factory just screwed up. There seems to be a lot of other Phillips on there. So I don't know if they were using up old supply or something. But either way, I snuck it out of there, no problem. So you can get this rubber, or what's left of this rubber isolator, out of there. And I'd say that is past its prime. So I'll make sure to hang on to that so I have a reference to get at the hardware store. Also, I had one extra from the Vornado, which some of you guys may have seen over there in the background. And that fits perfectly for the other holes that we have. So I'll need to get 1, 2, 3, 4 of those, I think. So that's a good sign. But I think I'm going to go ahead and see if I can't figure out a way to get these other 3 out of here. And I'll check back in with you guys in a second. Well, you know what? Sometimes interesting problems call for interesting solutions. I know this is slightly primitive Pete here, but hey, it does seem to work. Luckily, these things aren't that tight. So just grabbing a bit with the channel locks here actually seems to work somewhat decently. Obviously, it's not the most ideal solution, but hey, it seems to work, and it's all I got right now. Because I apparently don't have one of those right angle screwdrivers. But like I said, luckily these aren't that tight, so you can loosen it with the channel locks, then finish it off by hand, and then this just slips right out of there. So there you go. Alright, well, we got the center ring freed, got all the rubber grommets out of it, so actually taking this out makes this thing a heck of a lot easier to clean. I am, however, wondering whether this is original or not, because this is a different color than the rest of the fan. I don't know whether this fan's been repainted or sections of it have been repainted. It's also got this like hammer tone finish to it, which is a little less obvious on this piece, but it's definitely there. But I don't know. It's got a couple different colors on it. I just don't know what's factory and what's not. So most of the fan looks pretty original to me, at least, but again, not entirely sure there. If anybody knows, let me know. But that's how your tilt works there for your forward and reverse. And I bet this fan actually looks pretty neat when it's sitting in the window reversed like that. You can see the fan going. That's gonna look pretty neat. But anyways, I'm gonna go ahead and start cleaning this all up, and hopefully tomorrow I can run out to the hardware store, get us some of these rubber isolators here, and we can continue on. Because these things are totally shot. They're just crumbling, as you can see. There it goes. Alright, let's continue on. Alright guys, so I managed to get the motor apart here. The one end I was able, the rear side actually, I was able to get out by lightly tapping on the shaft with a rubber mallet. That popped the back free. And then the other side I sat this in the vise and I went around with a drift pin and I punched the top out. So that worked pretty well, wasn't too terrible to do. And I've also gone ahead and grabbed the speed coil here. If you're wondering why there's duct tape all over it, it's because I'm going to revarnish both of these. And I don't want to get varnish over everything, and I also don't know where my painter's tape is. But for the motor, there's no paint on here anyways, so duct tape sticks a little bit better. But I've had quite a few people ask me how I go about doing this, so I figured I'd include it in this video. This is the varnish I use. It's Spray-On EL600 Clear. Just go ahead and give that a good shake. And then what you want to do is, like I said, tape everything off that you don't want to get varnish on. And then also go ahead and blow these coils out with the air compressor or dust them the best you can. And then all you do is just kind of like your spray painting, just spray a nice coat on each coil. I try and go in every direction. Do this in a well ventilated area because this stuff stinks. Try and get down in between the coils there. I just go around and I put a few coats of this spray-on varnish on there. It's kind of hard to do one-handed with your non-dominant hand like I'm doing right now, but I'll go ahead and do a couple more coats off camera here. Hopefully you guys can see what I'm doing. I'm not really paying attention to where I'm pointing the camera. That's that. Speed coil. It's going to be do a nice heavy coat on this. And for those of you guys who don't know what this really does, it seeps into all the windings and it helps stick them together and it helps tighten them up. I don't know if you could see on the other side here, there's some of this white papery stuff. Well, over time, as you can see by the fact it's all missing on this side, that stuff deteriorates and it falls apart. And you get loose windings in there, and that's what creates that loud buzz when you start up a motor. And doing that for long enough will actually cause damage to the motor, because if it vibrates too much you can wear through that enamel on the wire and then you have a short condition, which is never good. So doing this really helps extend the life of the motor. And then what you go ahead and do after this is I actually use dental floss, and I'll go around, wrap it up real tight and tie a nice knot, and that will really hold everything in. But there you go. I just figured I'd show you guys how I do this. It's nothing too special or too crazy. But I usually go ahead and do about 3 coats, decently heavy coats, and then for this I'll do 3 on this side, flip it, do 3 on the other side. For this, obviously, you just flip it once. But just figured I'd show you guys how I do that. So anyways, now that the motor's apart, let's go ahead and take care of the bearings and the rotor. Alright, so we're back here working on the motor housings themselves. Before we get too involved here, I want to go ahead and clean these things up a bit because they're quite dirty, inside and out. See if we can't get some of this dirt and grime off. I have a feeling if I take the magic sponge to these that it's going to take the paint right off, so I don't really want to get into that. But I definitely want to clean up some of the dust, dirt, and grime that's all over them. The inside especially is pretty gross, and that probably won't be coming back off to get cleaned anytime soon either. So it's probably best that we do it now. Alright, that definitely looks better. Go ahead and rinse and repeat for the front here. Alright, that's looking a heck of a lot better. Something I noticed though, take a look at the bottom of that versus the top, or even just like this. It looks like somebody got paint on this. So I think that kind of solves our mystery. I think the inside of this thing was painted, because it looks like they just left the motor in place and they sprayed and they got overspray on the motor, but not on the bottom of it. So I think that solves that mystery. This fin is not quite as original as I thought and hoped, but that's also alright by me. That means somebody actually went through the effort of somewhat restoring this thing a little bit. Now here's our rotor. It's certainly got enough thrust washers on there. This fan did not have bad in and out play, so I'm actually going to leave those. I think it's just kind of funny But that looks like a solid chunk of copper or something around the rim here. But this little rotor's got some mass to it, I can say that much. But either way, I think I'm going to put this in the drill, and we'll clean it up a little bit like I usually do. This one's small enough I can put it in the handheld drill. There we go. One fresh looking rotor for you. Go ahead and sit that in there. And then I know I already put a bunch of oil in through the tubes, but I figured why not just add a little bit more while we're in here. Go ahead and put some right into the felts themselves, because who knows how good these oil passage tubes really are. But I can say one thing, that's definitely spinning nice and free now. So that's good. Just going to sit these upright, maybe. I kind of want to roll away. There actually seems to be a semi-decent amount of oil felt left in these, which is good. Sometimes these old fans, there's nothing left to it. It doesn't really hold any oil. Sometimes you have to put your own felt into them. Just pop this little thing out by accident. I think that sits up front there. But that is definitely spinning nice and freely now. So that's good. We are all oiled up here. So I'm going to actually let that soak in for a little while. Alright folks, nothing too special to see here, so I think I might just go into time-lapse mode real quick. I'm going to go ahead and clean up the blades, clean up the like air shroud thing, whatever you call it, clean up the grill, and we'll clean up the whole body of the fan too while we're at it. And then after that we can go ahead and reassemble our motor, put all the grommets in, and slap this thing back together. So let's get to it. Guys, so it has been let's see, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, I don't know. It's been a while since my last break and the last time I touched this fan, so I have absolutely no idea where I left off with the YouTube video. But today is actually Thanksgiving and I have a little bit of free time tonight, and this is going to be the extent of my free time for this break, because this is really just like a long weekend. So what I really want to do is I want to try and get this thing back together and running tonight, if possible. I think it's certainly doable, but it's also going to be a lot of work. But like I said, I have absolutely no clue where I left off with this video. So sorry if this is kind of an abrupt cut here. But either way, I do know where I left off with the fan, and that was that I think I finished cleaning everything up, and at this point I was going to reassemble this motor. And then also, just noticing this winding is a little loose here. We'll have to tie that up. So I got to tie up the windings
reassemble this motor. I gotta put the grommets in the like whatever this thing's called. Gotta put the grommets in this and make that work, and then I gotta pull the whole thing back together and rewire it too. So still got a decent amount of work left, but I think for tonight I'm just gonna dive right into it, and we'll start by getting this motor all back together, and then we can start working on the rest of the fan. So without any further ado, let's get right to it. Alright guys, so I think I'm going to start here by tying up these loose windings. I actually already did one here because I forgot to press the record button on the camera. But as you can see, despite revarnishing this, there are still a couple that are really loose. So I've been told by fellow fan collectors that actually rather than zip ties, dental floss is better for this. As silly as it sounds, apparently it's less affected by the heat or something like that, or it won't degrade as easily, which again, it wouldn't have been my first thought, but after having used it a couple times, it actually does seem to work really well. So that's what I've been using. I usually cut myself a decent little strip, and then I'll just do a nice tight double overhand knot with it around the windings, and then cut the extra slack off and leave it. And it usually works pretty darn well. So I usually just feed it around like that. Cinch it down nice and tight. Do another knot. You have to excuse my voice in this video. Unfortunately, feeling a touch under the weather right now. I've got a very sore throat, and of course, I'm doing this as a working through it type video. So, I've just got a bottle of water over here, and I'm gonna try and just power through it. But I might not do quite as much talking as I normally would. But either way, that's how that usually turns out. So I think what I'm going to go ahead and do here is go ahead and do the rest of these off camera. I'll clean up any varnish that got around the inside of the stator here, and we can go ahead and reassemble this motor. Alright, so I got them all tied back up. Even this side with the paper that was still around there, that's what it had originally. The paper was just disintegrating in my hands. Like here's a chunk, just absolutely turning to dust. So I went ahead and wrapped those sides as well, because while I'm in here I might as well do it right. So I'm pretty happy with that. I remember correctly, I already oiled these before my break. So I think at this point we can probably go ahead and just press this back into the motor housing here. I just have to be really careful to actually line these holes up correctly, so that the screws can go through. Otherwise, I will be in a deep doo-doo. So I'm going to go ahead and use the bolts here that hold the motor back together normally. Try and feed these through. And what I might actually be able to do is I might be able to... Yeah, actually, I think that will work. Sorry, I dropped the bolt on the ground there, or the nut rather. I might be able to use the nuts to help pull the stator back into the motor housing. I think that might work. We'll give it a shot at least, see what happens. Alright, so this actually is a lot simpler than I originally thought it would be. I ended up just flipping these bolts around so that the rounded heads are on this side, because they're a little smaller and they won't crunch this papery stuff. And put the nuts on this side, and I'm just going back and forth on each bolt here and giving it a few turns, and that's wiggling this motor cover back on. You just got to do it somewhat symmetrically so that it goes on square and it doesn't bind up. So I'm just bouncing back and forth here, doing like, I don't know, a turn and a half on each. And it is slowly pulling the stator back into the cover here. I think that this went on like this. I could be wrong. I'm going to double check, but I'm pretty sure that the curved part went forward. So I'm going to double check that real quick, then we can put this on and crank the rear motor housing on pretty much the same way I did the front. It's a good thing I checked, because this would have been backwards. I remembered that incorrectly. This goes on like this. That's why it's a good thing to always take pictures as you take stuff apart. And you know you're getting it back together the way it came apart. So that's going to sit on there like that. And on the shaft, just to give it a little lubrication for when it first starts going, you go ahead and slide this in here. Maybe. Looks like this bearing's slightly misaligned. There we go. That's in there. And we'll do the same deal with the rear bearing. I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit of oil in here. And a little bit on the rear shaft. I'm going to feed these wires in through here. Get that on there. Alright, so the motor is back together. What I like to do every time I reassemble a motor is I like to realign the bearings. To do that, just take a screwdriver, give it a couple taps evenly on each side, like this. That way you know your bearings are completely realigned and the motor spins nice and free, because sometimes what happens is you go to put them together and they're self-aligning bearings, but sometimes if you don't get it just quite square, the bearings will be ever so slightly off with regards to the shaft, and it will bind, or it'll run real tight, which is not something you want. But it's spinning nice and free, so pretty darn happy with that. The in and out play is minimal too, which is good. And just peeking in through the vents here, it looks like we got this pretty square in terms of where the rotor is in the stator, which is also important, so it's good to get that right. And if I remember correctly, this thing goes on here, and I think that these nuts hold that on, I think, like that. And then in a minute, once we get our electrical stuff set up, go ahead and put this back on there and put the new wires on. So that will sit on there like that. And that will be our Vornado motor all back together. But before we get to that, I want to go ahead and take care of these rubber grommets and whatnot and everything to do with that. So let me get that part of the fan back up here and we'll take a look at this. Alright, so over my last break I went to the hardware store and I got a bunch of these rubber grommets because the ones that were originally in here had long since disintegrated. Unfortunately, they didn't have too many select sizes. They just had a couple standard sizes, so I grabbed these, and as you can see, these fit really nicely in these holes in this whatever you call this thing. Call it the jet turbine piece. But there's quite a bit of slop with all these little arms that, you know, support the motor and go to the edge of the fan. And I suppose with the rubber, that would just mean that this would flop around a little bit and it probably wouldn't vibrate or make any loud noises. But I don't particularly love the idea of it sitting so loose on there. So I gotta come up with a way to build up on these arms to help them fit tighter in these grommets. And my first thought was tape. I could wrap a bunch of tape around this. That would work, but it's not exactly the most elegant solution in the world. So I'm going to think about this for a little bit, and I'll let you guys know what I end up going with. Alright, so I came up with a solution. As you can see, there is quite a build-up on here, and what I actually ended up doing was I took a bunch of these little pre-cut pieces of heat shrink that I have. This is actually one of the larger sizes that I don't end up using that frequently, and I've melted about 4 of them on there, and now this fits really nice and tight the way it should in that grommet, and it actually doesn't look half bad either. So I think that's a much more elegant solution than tape, which would get sticky and fall off with time. That's not going anywhere. Alright, so I figured I'd show you guys the process here with one of the other legs here. I mean, it's not the most exciting thing in the world to watch, but I figured I'd show you a little bit of it so you can kind of see what I'm doing. Go ahead and slide this over. Try and get this about the same as the other one here. I just did my best to center the shrink tubing on where the grommet will be sitting. And I just take my hot air gun here and work my way around and shrink it all down. Kind of like so. Once that one was on, you just rinse and repeat. And now I know it will take 4 of them. So just kind of twist that on there and make sure I get it all lined up here. And go ahead and shrink this one on too. Alright, so I finished these all up here. These 3 are done. And we got this one done as well. So, I think I'm going to go ahead and install this now. Make sure that grommet's facing this way so we can sneak the wire back out. I believe that these wire things went towards the fan. Yeah, I'm almost positive that's correct. Alright, that's done. The motor's installed. Of course, I installed it upside down, technically. I guess it's not upside down if you run it like that on exhaust. We'll call that good enough. I don't feel like redoing it. That's alright. The only thing that's really upside down is that the oil pipes are technically on the bottom this way. Maybe this whole thing was supposed to be sideways so that they'd always be on the side. I don't remember. But I think it'll be alright. Just oil it running this way. It's not like oil's gonna, run back out the tube and make a mess, I don't think. I'm pretty happy with the way that looks though, with the heat shrink tubing and everything. It looks pretty clean. I just gotta figure out a way to tighten up these screws real nice and tight. And then I think we can move on to doing some of the electrical work and buttoning this thing up. Alright, so with these grommets installed, I think it's time to do some electrical. I think I'm going to reuse this power cord that was on here because it's a nice shape and it's nice and long and it's kind of got a vintage look to it. And I kind of like that plug too. So that will be our main power going in from the side. Then we got to get that into the main little switch box here. I want to replace this wire here and these wire nuts. So that cord's going to go up to here, and then we definitely need a new cord that goes out of the switch and through all this stuff into the motor. And then I think in here we just used some they just used some wire nuts from the factory, so we'll probably do the same. That way it's easily taken apart if we need to again. Normally I'm a big advocate of soldering and shrink tubing stuff, but for something like that where A, it came from the factory with wire nuts, and B, it needs to be disconnectable, I think wire nuts will be fine. There'll be a strain relief in there, so it can't tug out or anything. I just need to find some wire to run from here down to the switch box. So I'll be back in 1 second. Alright, so I went digging through my box of wire. I got some of this just plain 2-conductor wire here. Kind of like a modern fan would use for a cord, actually. That may have been what this was. It had a fuse plug on the end, so probably. And I think I'm just going to feed this through here. See if we can't sneak it through this side. Alright, we got it fed through here. I'm going to go ahead and pull this through our little motor dome rear cover thingy here. tie a knot in this. Act as a strain relief. And then from here, I'm going to use some cutters to cut these down the middle here and separate them. And then we'll strip these and these motor wires, and we'll wire nut them back together. Trying to tuck these wires back out of the way here under this clip. Something like that. That can go back on there like that. I think it was this screw. That held that on there like that. So that's good. We'll leave a little slack on there, that way this can rotate. Get that through there. We're going to go ahead and feed the main power cord through here now too. I'm going to cut the strip part off though. The wire's just getting all screwed up. Go ahead and tie a knot in this to act as a strain relief. Hopefully I left enough slack on that actually when I'm looking at it. Yeah, that should be fine. I'm going to dump my parts tray out, and actually I never cleaned this. I'm going to go ahead and wipe that down really quick. Alright, so I went ahead and got the speed coil installed back in the box here, just to make things a little bit easier for us, or for me I guess. I'm going to go ahead and pop this switch back into place here too. I guess I should have done that first, but oh well. See if we can't just sneak that back up in there. There we go. It's a little bit crowded in here, not gonna lie. Hopefully, yeah. I think everything should be able to squeeze in here alright without putting too much strain on anything. So, I believe I remember how this was wired. I guess we'll find out. Hopefully it won't let any magic smoke out of anything. That would be bad. Oh yeah, those bearings are very happy now. Much better than when I found it. That's for darn sure. Alright, I think it's time we plug this in real quick and see what happens. I have no clue what speed it's on. Alright, apparently it's off. I forget if this is rated with watts or amps. 1.5 amps. Alright, let's go to amps. Alright, we're drawing 1.68 amps. I think that's fine. That appears to be medium. And that appears to be low. So I think everything is wired correctly. Go ahead and shut that down. Spin down is definitely much improved from when I got it. And that thing seems to run pretty darn smooth too. I'm pretty happy with that. Cool. Alright, I guess with that being the case, go ahead and take that off of there. Go ahead and flip this around. I guess we'll leave it like that. This here is a little bit finicky to get in. Go ahead and throw this little ring for the switch back on here. See if I can grab onto this without damaging the paint too bad. These things are kind of a pain in the ass for that reason. Alright, that's on there. Go ahead and get the switch back down to low. And put the final screw back in for this fan. Like so. Now I think the very last step here is going to be the front grille, which is actually toolless. Just got to go ahead and sneak these little hooks back in here. It's kind of a spring-loaded design, I guess. And there we go. Well, that project done. Alrighty, let's go for the first official startup here. Start up on high. Wow. That thing throws a hell of a lot of air. I'll say that much. Go with the Jordan U style airflow tester here. I can't even keep up with the amount of air that thing's throwing out. It's a very directional blast of air coming out in like a big tube from the fan, straight forward. I'm pointing towards the camera, you can hear the noise. No real rattles though, I'm pretty darn happy with that. Go down the medium here. And low. It's got a pretty nice distinction between all the speeds. High is definitely quite a air moving speed. Low is really not that loud either, but it's also still throwing out a really good amount of air, as you can see. But I could easily sleep with that running. We'll go back up to high here, and we'll do a quick spin down, even though the oil hasn't really soaked in that much from running yet. Still a hell of a lot better than when I got it, that's for darn sure. But I think what I'll do is I'll let this run for a few hours today, or tomorrow rather, and we'll do one more run of it on video here, and then we'll conclude it. So I'll check back in with you guys in a little bit. Alrighty guys, so I was editing this video, which I think I started making in like October, and it's currently August, and I finally got around to finishing the edit, and I got to the end and there was no outro. So here we are. This Vornado ended up coming out pretty darn good, especially for being a curb find. Obviously we still got a little bit of the rust and stuff, but overall it's really not in bad shape at all, and electrically and mechanically now it's very much sound. So I actually do plan on using this thing. You guys will see it in the future, because this is coming up to my college apartment with me this year, and I'm going to be using it because we don't have AC, and this thing's going to get mounted in the window and help cool the apartment. So I'm very excited to put this to use, because otherwise it would probably just be a shop fan sitting on the floor, because you can angle this up and down and whatnot. But I always liked window fans, especially these really early ones, so it'd be cool to put it to use. But just figured I'd show you guys how this thing ended up coming out, and without further ado, let's fire it up here. It would help to make sure it's plugged in. There we go. So these things are just stupidly powerful. Obviously with that blade pitch it's no surprise. See if I can get this paper towel roll to show you guys that.
maybe. There we go. Absolutely flapping in the breeze there. And actually some of the noise that this thing's making is one of the flaps vibrating. It's actually a very quiet fan, especially with all the stuff being rubber isolated. I'll go down to medium here. Really nice distinction between the speeds too, as you can hear. Go down to low. On low you can literally barely hear it. Just a very slight whirring. And the other thing I'm going to mention is that we are running off just regular line power here, which is probably, I'm going to guess, anywhere between 118 to 125 volts. Or maybe 122. I don't think I've seen it quite that high. But either way, this fan's rated for less than that. So I've run it off a speed controller I have at 110, and it's really, really calm on low. Still moving a nice breeze, as you would expect. I'm going to stand on this side. But it is almost dead silent, which can be really nice to use at night. Could very easily fall asleep with this thing running like this. But anyways, we'll go back up to high here. And let's do a spin down. It's not going to be super long because this fan's been sitting in the basement a little while, and also those blades have a stupid pitch to them. So there's going to be a lot of air resistance. But it's definitely a hell of a lot freer than when we first got this thing. That much I remember. But anyways, guys, I think that's going to do it for this video. So hopefully you liked it. If you did, you know what to do. Hit the little like and subscribe buttons. And then, of course, as always, feel free to leave a comment if you have one. But anyways, until the next one, guys, I'll see ya. Bye.